I'm 78 years old, and I've been thinking a lot about family lately. Not the easy, polite kind of thinking you do when everyone is around. The kind that comes when you're sitting alone in a quiet house, and you realize that the people who mattered most, they aren't coming back. They're gone, and there's nothing you can do about it. I didn't notice at the time how fragile it all was, how easily the small choices I made could add up to a lifetime of absence. When I was younger, I thought I was doing the right things. Work, ambition, making a name for myself, providing. I had a wife, 2 children, and a life that looked full from the outside. But inside, I was always in a rushing to meetings, rushing to deadlines, rushing home tired and distracted. I assumed there would be more time for dinners, for talks, for birthdays. I assumed that tomorrow, next week, next year, I could make up for the moments I skipped. I remember my daughter once asked me to come watch her play in a school recital. I said I couldn't. I had a report due. I told myself she would understand. She did. Or at least she didn't argue. I thought it was a small thing. That one choice didn't feel like much. But over the years, those small things stacked. A missed recital here, a postponed conversation there. I didn't see the invisible thread of distance weaving between us. I thought love could be paused, that it waited for me to have the right time. By the time my son was a teenager, I was too tired to notice his quiet rebellion. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't throw fits. He just stopped asking me questions, stopped sharing. And I, foolishly, took it as normal teenage behavior. I didn't realize that by skipping the little talks, the after-school chats, the walks in the park, I had missed my chance to be present in the way a father should be. I can still see him in my mind, standing at the edge of the lawn, with a book in hand, looking for approval that I was too busy to give. I suppose I thought that providing meant something, that giving them money, a house, opportunities, would make up for my absence. But it didn't, not really. They needed my attention, my time, my quiet presence more than anything. And I gave them all the things I thought were important while letting the things that actually mattered slip quietly through my fingers. Evenings used to feel full because the house was busy, but that feeling was an illusion. I was busy, yes, but I wasn't present. I remember coming home from work late, tired, and my wife would ask me about her day. I'd nod and smile, pretending to listen, while half my mind was still on the office. My children learned early on not to interrupt, not to insist. They learned that their father was too important to be bothered with the small things. And over decades, those small things built walls that I never knocked down. It wasn't dramatic. Nobody yelled. Nobody slammed doors. It was quiet. The erosion was quiet. And that quietness made it almost impossible to see until much later. By the time I noticed, the gaps were too wide, and I was too old to do anything about it. The years I thought I was investing in a better future were actually spent building a barrier between myself and the people I loved. And now, sitting here, I realize that barrier is permanent. Time doesn't forgive. People don't wait. And love, unattended, doesn't survive the years of absence. By the time I hit my 50s, I began noticing the quiet changes more clearly. But still, I didn't act. My wife had grown distant in ways that weren't sudden, but gradual. She stopped asking about work, about meetings, about my days. We shared the same space, the same meals, but we weren't sharing our lives anymore. I blamed her mood swings sometimes, or thought she was just tired, or that she needed space. The truth was I had already drifted without realizing it, and she had quietly pulled away too. I can see it now in the small moments I ignored. Her birthday one year I had to work late. I told her I'd make it up the next weekend. There wasn't a next weekend. And when I finally remembered, It felt forced, awkward. She had learned that my promises were only words, not intentions. Our marriage wasn't bad. It wasn't shouting or fighting, but it was empty, in ways that weren't noticeable until everything else had faded. My children were growing into adults by then. My son had moved out for college. My daughter had friends and activities that kept her busy. I told myself they were finding independence, that it was normal. But I didn't see that the independence came in part because I had been absent, because I had never been the one they could rely on for the small, quiet support that matters. By the time I noticed, I had missed countless birthdays, graduations, and first heartbreaks. All of it was gone, and there was no catching up. I remember one evening clearly. I had driven past my daughter's house to surprise her, thinking she'd be happy to see me. She wasn't. She was polite, yes, but distant. I realized then that she didn't expect me to show up, and she didn't rely on me. I had become a stranger in the life I had built, and it hit me the realization wasn't sudden. It was just quiet, heavy, crushing, but in a soft, almost imperceptible way. I tried to change after that, to call more, to visit, to pay attention, but the distance was already there. My daughter would respond politely, but I could hear the hesitancy in her voice. My son would nod, but I could sense he had learned to navigate life without me. My wife, she was still here, but she had retreated into habits, into routines that I wasn't a part of. I had years to fix it, and I had squandered them thinking I could make it right tomorrow. The damage accumulated quietly, over decades, and it was invisible until it became permanent. The small choices, the missed dinners, the delayed conversations, the excuses I had thought they were trivial. I had thought time was mine to command, and it wasn't. None of it is. I can remember the laughter in the house, yes, but it feels like echoes now. And that echo is better because it reminds me that the presence I took for granted, the connection I assumed would always be there, is fragile, and I failed to protect it. I see old photographs on the mantel, and they're just reminders that what you have today can disappear, quietly if you're not paying attention. I think the turning point, the moment when clarity finally arrived, came with my wife's illness. She had been diagnosed quietly, kept it from me at first because she didn't want to worry me. By the time I knew, it was serious. It was a sickness that allowed no time for delay. She needed care, attention, someone to be there, to hold her hand, to listen to her fears, and I realized, too late, that I had no idea how to be that person. I had never learned. I spent the days running around, making appointments, sitting in sterile hospital rooms, trying to be present. But every minute was heavy with the weight of all the moments I had missed before. I tried to talk to her about her life, about our life, but the words felt inadequate. She listened, nodded, sometimes smiled, but I could see the quiet resignation in her eyes. She loved me. Yes, I'm sure she did. But decades of distance can't be erased in a few hurried days. My children came around too. They were polite, attentive, but distant. My son would check in, but he didn't confide. My daughter tried to bridge the gap, but the silence of years couldn't be broken in a single phone call or a weekend visit. I realized then that my absence had cost me the trust and intimacy that no amount of effort now could restore. They forgave me, I think, in the sense that people forgive what they have no choice but to live with, but they didn't forget. They carried the absence with them, and I could see it. Visiting my wife in the hospital one evening, I held her hand and thought about all the times I could have been there. Recitals, birthdays, quiet walks, late-night talks, sick days, first heartbreaks, graduations. Every moment I had deferred, every excuse I had made, had added up to an emptiness I could not fill. She squeezed my hand gently, and I understood then that she had survived the distance. But I hadn't. I had survived it, Yes, but I was alone in understanding the depth of my own failure. It's strange how regret works. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It arrives slowly, layered over years of ordinary decisions. You don't feel it while it's happening. You only feel it when the consequences are permanent. When the people you love most are slipping away and you realize you could have been there and weren't. There's no sudden collapse, no dramatic revelation, just a quiet, inescapable understanding that the years you thought were endless are gone. When she passed, the house felt emptier than ever. I could hear the silence pressing against the walls, and in that silence, I could feel all the moments I had never spent with her and with my children. I thought I had time. I thought I could catch up. I thought love would wait. And now, sitting here, I know it won't. Love, connection, presence, these things are fragile. They can vanish quietly, and when they do, they leave a weight that nothing else can lift. Even now, weeks later, I can see her chair at the kitchen table, and I remember the way she would hum softly while cooking, or the way she always noticed when the house felt cold and pulled a blanket over me without asking. These memories are heavy because they remind me of what I took for granted, of what I left undone, while I thought I was busy being responsible. Responsibility isn't just about work. It isn't just about provision, it's about showing up. And I didn't. After she passed, the quiet in the house was unbearable at first. I wandered through rooms that were once full of life, and every small thing reminded me of her absence. The sound of her kettle whistling, the way she folded laundry, the smell of bread baking on Sunday mornings, all of it gone. I tried to call my children more often, tried to fill the gaps with conversation, but the gaps were too wide. I was too late. I see my daughter now only occasionally, and our talks are polite, careful. My son visits when he can, but there's a reserve in his tone that wasn't there when they were little. I can't blame them. I wasn't there for the small, ordinary moments that build trust and closeness. I wasn't there for the questions, the stories, the shared silences that make family a living thing. And now, it's too late to get them back. I think about all the moments I spent thinking I could make it up later. I spent hours at the office, nights reading reports, weekends traveling for conferences, believing that what I was doing was important. And it was. In a way, it kept food on the table. Sure, but the cost was invisible until it was irreversible. And the cost was enormous. I was wealthy in things that don't matter, and poor in the things that do. Sometimes I wonder if I ever truly understood what family meant. I thought I did. I thought I knew love because I provided, because I protected. But love is not provision. Love is presence, consistency, patience. And I didn't have enough of any of those. I tried later, yes, but the years I missed can never be recovered. They are gone, quiet and irrevocable, leaving only memory and regret. I sit in my chair by the window now and watch the street below. Sometimes a child rides by on a bicycle, and I think of my own children at that age. How quickly they grew. How unaware I was that those ordinary days were fleeting. Time doesn't stop. It doesn't slow. And you can't reclaim the moments you let slip by. You can't rewind. You can't go back. I'm not angry, though. I don't think anger helps. I'm sad. Yes, and I am sorry. I am sorry for all the birthdays I missed. The evenings I spent reading reports instead of listening. The conversations I postponed. I am sorry for the quiet distance that grew without me noticing. And I am grateful, too grateful for the laughter I did hear, the hugs I did receive, the moments that I somehow managed not to ruin completely. But gratitude and sorrow sit together now, inseparable. If you're listening and family matters to you, I hope you understand what I mean. Not as advice or instruction, just as truth from someone who has lived long enough to see the quiet, unstoppable cost of absence. Show up. Be present. Say the words you think you can wait on. Spend the time you assume you'll have later, because later comes once and only once. And then it's gone. So I'll be honest. Most days I just sit with the quiet. I think about what could have been, and I let myself feel it fully. There's no fixing it. There's no undoing it. But there's remembering, and there's acknowledgement. That's all I can do now. That, and hope that the people I love know, in some way, that I see it, that I understand it, and that I regret it deeply. I'm 78 years old, and I have learned too late that family is not something you can put off. It's not something that waits for the right moment, or the end of work, or the right circumstances. It's here, or it isn't, and when it isn't, nothing else can take its place.